All right, it's 8:06. We'll call the meeting to order and start out by reading our mission statement for Naturally Lewis and the IDA. Lewis County Economic Development, through its board, the IDA, and its brand Naturally Lewis, are championing the growth of a community where people want to live, work, build business, and play. We foster forward thinking and relationship building, connecting people, businesses, partnerships, and resources to effectively and efficiently grow our county. Next is the director's report.
Thanks, Joe. Good morning, everyone. Morning, Jerry.
Good.
Just getting started. Good morning, everyone. I provided to you my executive director's report with some highlights from January. Just a few updates. In January, we attended our New York State Economic Development Council annual meeting. Typically, we would have attended that meeting in Albany, but they held it virtually this year. We learned a lot from that conference, and one of the things that we actually requested as a session is a session on Pilot 101, just to hear from other IDAs on best practices with pilot processes and how they issue pilots in their counties. So Cheyenne and I are going to be working on implementing some new scoring and evaluation criteria for our pilot process. This is something that we currently don't really have in place, but we are expecting an audit within the next year or two from the state, just because they are cracking down on IDA audits. So we just want to make sure that we are doing everything as standard and taking some best practices that have been working from around the state and implementing them here at our IDA. So more to come with that. We kicked off our Tug Hill Somerville Economic Impact Study this past month with our Tug Hill regional partners. The survey is just about complete, the creation of it, and our consultants will this month work on some of the on-site surveying, and we expect to launch the electronic survey next week. We're doing some very targeted outreach for the survey, and we're really excited and looking forward to that process. And lastly, this past week, I just wanted to highlight that we hosted a real estate industry roundtable event with our Jefferson County partners, where we brought in real estate agents and brokers from the region to talk about how we can work together, how can we keep people in the North Country, how can we continue to attract people to the North Country, just because of the influx of sales of properties from people downstate. We had over 40 people on that call and had really great discussion. What was really concerning, but also a good tidbit for us to take away, is that these real estate agents had no clue that our agencies existed. So they didn't realize that the economic development or even the chambers really existed, and they didn't understand the services that we offer. So that was a really great discussion to just put out the word of everything that we do and how we can assist them and help our communities grow. And we're going to continue that discussion with that group moving forward. Other than that, I can't believe it's February already. January just flew by. Any other questions for my report?
Brittany, I had a question for you.
Yep.
In your packet, you mentioned, or in your report, you mentioned DBA packets.
Yeah.
And does that's newly filed doing business as certificates, I assume, but there's a lot of LLCs that are being formed in the county. And do you have any way to, I guess, identify them and reach out to them and send them a packet of information about what you do? Because that's what most businesses are formed as nowadays. They're not really doing a DBA, they're doing an LLC.
That's a good point. Currently, we're working with Lincoln, Lewis County, and even the county clerk office to get the newly filed DBAs. I'm wondering if the clerk's office would be willing to provide that list as well. That's something that we didn't consider.
With the clerk, though, it's filed with the Department of State in Albany,
Oh, okay.
but it is filed by the county. And then maybe the journal could provide you with the information, because the publications have to go in the journal.
Yep.
And if they would be able to give you information, like whenever a new LLC publication goes in, they could let you know, and then that would provide you with the address to send them a packet.
Perfect. Yeah, this is a partnership effort with the chamber. So we send a nice letter from Kristen and myself, and information about chamber membership, information about what we offer as the Economic Development Office, and things like myNY.biz, just some other little tidbits of information that might help a newly formed business. So we'll look into the LLC list.
Okay.
All right, any other questions? All right, thank you, Brittany. So next would be correspondence.
Yeah, we received a thank you card from Tug Hill Artisan Roasters. Just thought it was a nice thing to share with you all. We've been working with them for a number of years now and assisted them with the CDBG grant last year, and currently are helping them with the potential expansion of their business to a new downtown location in the old jail building. We helped county planning write a grant for that project for some of the remediation of the asbestos in that building. So they were just really grateful for our help, and it's something I wanted to share with you guys.
Thank you. All right, I don't, privilege of the floor would be next, but I don't believe we have anyone on today or any requests, right? All right. Next would be committee reports, just going in the order they're listed. The governance committee, Jerry, if there's anything.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. First, I want to apologize for being a few minutes tardy. I continue to struggle with our medical staff executive committee meets and butts up against our board meeting here. So I appreciate everyone's indulgence on that. We met, the group met back in January 19th. It was a very good meeting. We primarily focused on two topics. The first was the Lionsdale property, specifically hearing a presentation from Camoin 310 Consultants. I felt like we had a very robust discussion, you know, I feel like the path forward has been laid out, and as you can see in the minutes, you know, staff is reaching out to the town and, you know, trying to work collaboratively so we can support the development of that project while also, you know, trying to be respectful of the needs of the community. So continues to move forward. Second item, which took about probably 30% of the meeting, we spent some time talking about the IDA evaluation of the board survey, and felt like we had a constructive discussion, worked through it. I'm assuming at some point we'll review it as a full board. Is that, am I correct, Brittany, in that assumption?
Well, I think, I mean, one of the outcomes of the committee meeting was for myself to schedule one-on-one meetings with each board member to just,
Right.
you know, if they have concerns or suggestions. So I think that's the outcome was. If you would like to review it as a full board, we can certainly do.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm pushing for that or not. I think what's important is everyone have the opportunity to review the survey. What was interesting is we landed exactly where we are with regards to meeting day and time. And I feel like that topic has been around for several years. So the survey, addressed that issue until next year, and I'm sure it'll get revisited. I think the other part that was important, and it's on the page of the minutes, and that really speaks to what do we want to learn more about, and there were some key areas. And the item that drew the most was community development projects. So I think that really helps to give some guidance to Brittany and the team to make sure each of our meetings we spend time looking at the current projects and potential projects. But I think the survey reflected very positively with regards to the engagement with the IDA team and the current leadership model. So unless there are questions, that would be my report.
Thank you, Jerry. Any questions or comments? All right, then we'll move on to Finance Committee. Tom, I believe, is on the phone, it looks like.
Yeah, I'm here. We met on January 21st. We had quite a number of topics that we covered. We went over the December finances, covered the Lands Falls grant, and also discussed Flat Rock Wind. I'll let Cheyenne fill you in a little better on her report. We discussed the Barkeeter loan, and it seems that we are recouping a fair amount of our money back from them on the sale of the equipment. We went over the draft budget, which Cheyenne, I'm sure, will go over again with you. We thought that it looked pretty good as far as the committee was concerned. We discussed Otis pilot, and it seems that they're short on numbers of employees that they have there, but I don't know if there was any conclusion as to what to do about it, but discussed that. We discussed brewing company's deferment and felt that to let that play out for the 6 months and then reevaluate it at that point. We also discussed the Tug Hill Roasters financing, and we was concerned with their business plan a little bit, but thought that if they could get the grant that they're applying for, that then if they got that much financing, then we could go ahead and help them. Then we spent quite a bit of time on U.S. Light Energy, the fact that they have finally applied for a pilot for both the Martinsburg. There's 2 different projects in Martinsburg. They have got them about roughly 50% complete and had never filed a pilot application, but they have done that now, and we felt that we were going to wait for some legal advice on how to handle that. So that is most of the discussion that we had at our meeting. A separate point that I thought was interesting, back a few months ago, I was advocating for wise land use, and I recently read that Bill Gates has acquired 270,000 acres of land, and Jeff Bezos has acquired 420,000 acres. So apparently land is a pretty good investment. So I just thought that was an interesting tidbit. But if there are any questions on our committee meeting, I'd be happy to try and answer them.
Thanks. Any questions for Tom? And I believe we will review a few of those items that we have more information on in more detail. So, but all right, if there's nothing at the moment, then we'll move on to items for approval. The first would be the minutes from the January 7th meeting, which were shared in the packet that went out from Jenna. Were there anyone notice any mistakes or any comments with the meeting minutes that need to be addressed? Could we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Darlene, a second.
I'll second.
Kenzie, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. All right, moving on to December's financials, Cheyenne.
Right, I think we're on page 11 of your packet if you want to reference. So start with the balance sheet. December and January there's a lot of activity on the pilot front. A lot of our pilots get billed out in January, or a lot of our pilots by the end of December, and then the pilots get paid out or billed out in January and are due in February to be paid back out to the taxing jurisdiction. So you'll see a lot of activity there for a few months. Notable on the balance sheet, on the checking and savings line, you see an increase there. That's mostly due to the grant for the Lions Falls project. That check hit our checking account in December and wasn't immediately paid back out. We had to reconcile what the IDA responsibility was, what part we got to keep to cover our costs versus what we needed to give to the LCDC to cover their costs. So you'll see a big chunk of that go back out in January. On the accounts receivable line, again, that's that $150,000 grant from the Lions Falls project. So we received that in, so that accounts receivable got reduced. Also, the sales tax fee, or sales tax exemption fee from number 3 wind, they finally paid that because they're ready to move forward. That was $20,000. On the other current assets line, you'll see the Flat Rock Wind IDA fee. That's our first installment of that IDA fee at $100,000 for 5 years. That was paid in December, as well as you see the, because this is an accrual basis, you see the $20,000 from number 3 wind hit that line as well. And the rest stay pretty stagnant. Any questions on that? All right, let's go on to the next page, which is the profit and loss. I didn't have really any notes on this one, besides the fact that payroll expenses were high for December because there was 3 pay periods, or three Thursdays in December where we were paid. So it's at 150% exactly. Any questions on that one? The Finance Committee also reviewed our monthly transactions, and I guess the only notable there was the grant disbursement for Bodhi Kombucha was included there. So that was a big ticket item. That's all I have on the financials.
All right, sorry, I had to step away for a second. Were you done, Cheyenne?
Yeah, we're all set. I think we're ready
Okay.
for a motion to approve.
All right, so this December financials, this would be for a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second,
Second,
Jerry, any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you. Moving on, would be the 2021-2022 fiscal year budget, which we need to review now in order to have it be submitted to the state by their deadlines.
Yeah, so we're on page 13 of your packet. Page 13 and 14 are kind of the meat of the budget, and then page 15 is what I actually submit into Paris, the reporting system for the ABO. And you've seen this in draft form at the committee level in last month's full board meeting, I believe, or we had the budget workshop, I guess. The only changes since the full board has seen it is that we did have a line item added for the LCLG RPB administration. That's Champlain Lake George. Help me, Brittany.
Lake Champlain, Lake George Regional Planning Board.
Regional Planning Board Administration. That's the CARES Act funding that we found out that we were a part of or had access to in our region, and we get a little bit of administration benefit from that as we refer businesses there for those loans. The other line that we've modified just a little bit is on the expense side. Just not breaking specifically our economic development activities and project redevelopment. So we haven't allocated those super specifically to a certain project. We want to be able to be a little bit nimble and adjusting as things come at us.
where would that be, Cheyenne?
That is on the second page of the budget under expenditures. So page 14 of your packet.
Yes,
Other operating expenditures in blue.
yeah.
And then down, it's one of the kind of reddish brown lines, economic development activities.
Oh, okay, I see it.
And given we still, I mean, the line we report to the ABO are the blue lines. So the details below those don't matter a ton to the ABO, but just for our tracking purposes, that's how we decided to allocate.
So so you are right. I think we've seen this through various stages of development. So for our purposes today, you need a motion for us to approve. There'll be a second, and if there's any discussion, that's where we're at now, correct?
Yes, we need a motion to approve submitting this budget to the ABO.
Okay, I would move that.
Jerry, second.
Second.
Any discussion?
I'll just add that I think the process that was used this year for budget development and the way it was worked into board education so that we can get to a place to approve it today was outstanding. I think the staff did a terrific job, the team. And I think this is the model that moving forward, we should continue to use. So well.
Thanks, Jerry.
Thanks, Jerry.
All right, thank you for that. Any other discussion? All right, then all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion carries. Thank you.
Great, we'll get that submitted.
Moving on, the next would be So as Brittany mentioned in her correspondence, there's a number of our policies that are suggested to be reapproved annually. And so any other comments on that, Brittany?
Yeah, these, as you all remember, and just for information for Mackenzie, we went through and had an attorney look at all of our policies and just made sure that they were up to date. So now we're just getting some of these annual policies on a schedule. Some of these we approved a year ago. Some of these were a little over a year. So again, just a formality. We shouldn't have any changes on these just because they're still a year later.
And another piece of information for the sake of everyone is that our governance committee also spent significant time reviewing and updating some of these policies within the last year and a half time frame. So they have had attention in recent history. It's not like we're reapproving something that's 20 years old.
Right.
Yeah, Joe, I'd like to build upon what you've just said. We did spend about a year and a half. I recall Tom and I with our former director, Eric Verkler, Brittany, and other members of the team had several work sessions where we sort of plowed our way through all of the policies. And Brittany is correct in that we also had a legal review because, as you know, things change. So I am certainly, as a chair of governance and having personally been part of that review process, would bring forward a motion to approve the slate of policies that are coming forward. And then once that action happens, I will have a follow-up question on the board responsibilities policy for Brittany to weigh in on. But I would bring that motion forward to approve the slate of policies as presented this morning.
Thank you, Jerry. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Darlene, thank you. Any discussion?
Well, this is probably where I can bring my comment up. On the board responsibilities policy. There's a reference to all of us must complete the state training within 1 year of appointment. So my question to Brittany is, Brittany, are we following that policy? Have we as a board appropriately gone through the state training within the period in question? And I have new members that would not have done it yet, but are past a year.
So this would be the online training that the ABO
Correct.
puts on. We have sent Mackenzie the link and they do have a year to complete.
Right.
Actually, if I can interject, Mackenzie gets the award for completing it as independently and as quickly as anybody since I've been here. So.
Great.
All right, well done.
Mackenzie.
I just wanted to get it off my list of things to do.
I may have told her I loved her.
Too bad Ron isn't on the line. I think he took the longest amount of time to complete that. And in office, had to come into the office. Did it with him.
So let the record reflect that, okay?
Yeah.
Yes, but we are 100% up to date and doing great there right now.
Terrific, thank you.
Excellent, thanks. Okay, so any other comments or discussion for the record? All right, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, motion carries, thank you. Last item on our list, and Tom already referred to this, and you may recall we spent quite a bit of time on it last month, but I'll let Brittany take it over for Skewed Brewing.
So Skewed came to us for a 6-month deferral. We talked about it at our last board meeting. Board had a number of questions about it, so we decided to table it. We went to Skewed to clarify some of the questions that the board had and discuss that at the finance committee. And just to, get Jerry up to date because he was not at the last meeting. Basically, Skewed has lost a significant amount of business because of majority of their businesses within their own restaurants and the restaurant industry in general. And when their Armory Square location shut down in, I think, October-ish, November-ish, that was a huge hit to their sales. So they are opening up a downtown Lava location. Not sure if you guys have seen it on social media or heard about it within the community. They're opening a little eatery and tap room and beer store called Hot Dogs. And the menu is going to be loaded hot dogs and poutines and just a really creative menu. And the board wanted to make sure that the deferment of their payments to us was not funding the opening of Hot Dogs. And they explained to us that they have all of the kitchen equipment. They already own it from their Skewed Brewing location restaurant in the mall that shut down due to the pandemic. And really the only expenses that they had for opening this downtown location was rent and food inventory, which was less than $1,000 total. So they feel that they really need this location in order to ramp up sales of their canned beer. If you can recall, we provided them with a grant to purchase a canning line. And really, they stated that without that canning line, they probably wouldn't be in business. And luckily, I believe their Armory Square location in Syracuse is opening back up. So things are looking up for them. It just was a really tough few months for them. So they asked for the 6-month deferment from October to March, which means that they will start repaying their loan and equipment leases in April. Any questions or comments on that? And the finance committee did recommend sticking with the 6-month deferral.
All right, thank you for that summary. So any questions at this time? Do we have a motion to grant the 6 months deferral on the loan, given the hardships faced during the pandemic for the business?
Sure.
Goggin, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Yeah.
Darlene, thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right, thank you. Motion carries. All right, that concludes that portion of the agenda. We have 4 items for discussion purposes and updates, and so Brittany or Cheyenne, whoever, pick that up.
Yeah. The Q4 loan report. This was reviewed at the finance committee as well, but we just wanted to bring it to the full board for your awareness. Given that we just approved Skewed's deferral, they were really the only ones that weren't current. And as we were working through this deferral process, that will go away now that we've approved that deferral. So our loans, everybody else is doing great and staying on time, which is awesome to see. Hopefully this little breather for Skewed will allow them to get back up and current again with us. Our leases are good. Again, besides Skewed has a lot of, they have their loan, their equipment lease to own, and then their property lease with us. So we are going to look at if there's any of those pieces that we can kind of consolidate going forward. But for the time being, they sit in a couple different buckets. We also have the CDBG grant line or section on this report, just to show you what we awarded, what's been dispersed, and what we've collected in administration costs for that program. And I think as of today, kind of an update from the December 31 date on this report, we're about to disperse the Bateman Draft House portion as well. So then the only one left to disperse would be the Cummings Cream Line grant. And then we can wrap that one up. And I think we're looking to do hopefully another round of that one when we're able to. It's been a lot of paperwork, but it's been a good program for a good handful of diverse businesses that we've worked with on it. The Bark Eater equipment sale for a loan recoupment. As of December 31st, this is kind of where we stood. We hadn't necessarily collected each of those lines, but they were committed. Since then, Jenna did a bunch of work for us, putting some of the odds and ends on Facebook Marketplace, and took care of a bunch more of those kind of smaller items. And I think Bateman Draft House will be ready to purchase the stuff that they wanted. And I think we're going to be about at $8,000 in recoupment, somewhere close to that. So not bad at all so far.
That's actually, I mean, that's actually more than what we were, thinking it might be, correct?
Yeah. I'm happy with how that's playing out, and if we can get out of that space that we're not paying any rent on currently, that would be awesome.
And we still haven't sold the Pico system, have we?
We haven't.
There you go. That'll be more money.
Yes, I would somewhat like to run a brew through that just to make sure it's 100% operational, and just to taste the result, of course. But before we try to market that.
All right. Thank you. Any questions on the loan report? I know some of that was driven by our annual audit and the idea of scoring loans, which still seems a little abstract, but I think that sort of summary is proving helpful to keep up to date on what's going on. So. All right, Otis technology pilot.
Yep, okay. So we brought this to the attention of the Finance Committee, and I'm just going to kind of run through where we're at with the Otis pilot. So Otis Technology currently has a 10-year pilot with us. The original project was an expansion, a warehousing expansion, to meet the needs of some government contracting and growth initiatives that they had in place, as well as a new building for a daycare center. We believe that the daycare center has since shut down, and we believe that portion of the pilot has been taken care of. But each year we do an annual survey of all of our pilot projects, and the ABO started to question why Otis employee numbers were increasing or they kept decreasing. So we set up a meeting with Otis to talk about the situation. Currently, they're in year 7 of 10 in their pilot. So essentially they're paying 80% of their normal property tax. Otis provided us with correspondence as to why their employee numbers don't match, what they originally put in the pilot application, and we provided that correspondence to you. But basically, a pilot was issued for the expansion that affected a lot of their sewing sector of their business. And in their pilot application, they listed that they would grow their employee base to up to approximately 160 jobs. And currently they're at around approximately 120 jobs. And reasons for that reduction or lack of increase in employment include that some of those growth initiatives were fulfilled years ago due to large orders by the government. There's been a number of changes and requirements surrounding government policy that has affected their business structure in the sewing realm. in other parts of their business, and they continue to invest in automation and technology at their facility. But despite all of these hardships, they continue to diversify their product base through their commercial markets and are really, despite a lot of the frustrations that they've had with doing business in New York State, they are really committed to keeping that Lions Falls location. So we went through and looked at some of our current recapture policies that we just put in place within the past couple of years. And in those policies, there is a focus on job creation. However, when this pilot was issued 7 years ago, there is nothing in the project agreement about job creation or recapture of benefits if they didn't meet those goals. So we discussed this at the Finance Committee meeting, and it was recommended that we take this to the full board. Excuse me. Excuse me. Board. Goodness, sorry. The board must discuss whether or not we should consider recapturing the benefits. So this means for the last few years of their pilot, we would take away their pilot and have them pay full property tax. If this is something we feel that we should do, there's a process that we need to follow to work with the taxing jurisdictions. And if we feel that we shouldn't take this recapture process, we must document the reasons why we're not going through recapture. And the chair, Joe, must send correspondence to Otis and the affected taxing jurisdictions. So our recommendation as staff, based on the situations at hand, is to not enter into a recapture because of their efforts to continue to diversify operations, their investment and commitment to Lewis County, the fact that they cannot control government policy and contracts that affect their business, and we are in the middle of a pandemic. So I would like to open it up to any discussion, questions, comments. I know that was a really long overview of how we got to where we're at.
Brittany, so that's the staff's recommendation. What was the Finance Committee's recommendation?
I don't know as we really had one. We just wanted to bring the discussion to the board, but given the business climate in general, I think that recommendation is proper.
I wasn't part of the committee discussion, but I just wanted to bring up one other thing that another reason to grant a pilot is job retention. While we often, there's often a focus on job creation, job retention is also a common practice reason to issue a pilot. And while I don't know exactly how we, Brittany's laid out a number of reasons, and I don't know how common it is to switch the reasoning, during the course of the pilot, or what officially we have to do there. But I think it's worth noting as we consider this that if we feel this is going to have a negative impact on job retention, then that's another legitimate consideration to bring into the discussion. So, and maybe that's something we can ask them about too, is, they're not at the job numbers that were originally laid out, but what is the threat to current employment and job retention, given the situation?
I think they have, with some of the like SAFE Act laws in New York State, and with the new administration at the federal level, there's certainly threats to their business as it is now. So because of those, they've really tried to diversify operations grow their commercial market base, even dabble in different types of products, like with some of their gun cleaning kit, like little brushes and things like that. They've kind of thought about how can we use these brushes in a different way. Maybe it's for, some sort of cleaning type of kit, or, household cleaning, or, for auto repair and things like that. So they're really trying to diversify their product base, and they have their own store like through Amazon. So they've been selling a lot of retail through Amazon, through their website. Because as you know, the government contracts, they come and go, and it's really dependent on the climate of the government at the time.
So Brittany, I mean, this was under discussion items rather than items for approval. So is this, what is the timeline we're looking at for this, and where do we need to go?
I mean, and Shai, chime in if you think otherwise. I mean, I think the board needs to decide whether or not, we should table this, and do we need to look into it a little bit more, or no, we shouldn't enter into the recapture mode, or yes. And if yes, then there is another process that we should follow to make that happen.
Yeah, we haven't had any feedback on our annual report submitted to the ABO in August. I did have to open it to modify a couple things, so I just reclosed it not too long ago. But that's usually what spurs a question from the ABO is that annual report submittal. We haven't heard anything this year. They did question it last year. So it was important to get it documented in the minutes that we're discussing it. And then if we choose to move forward to a point where we're making a motion one way or the other, then again, it's good to have that included in the minutes as a reference for the ABO.
Yeah, so I think, so if we step back a little bit, so my takeaway is it clearly has been a difficult economic market. It sounds like there is a good dialogue between Otis and our team at the IDA. I think their strategies to navigate the period seem appropriate. I concur with you, Joe, that sometimes it's about not only bringing in new, but working with those who are here in a collaborative way to help ensure success. And it really, based on the email correspondence and what you've shared, Brittany, I feel like there is clearly open dialogue. I don't feel a need for us to move to a place of recapture. It seems like continuing the ongoing conversations, making sure, regularly you are engaged with them, seems like a good place to be right now.
Thank you for those comments. Does anyone else have thoughts to share at this time?
I guess I agree with what Jerry has said, to the point that I would go ahead and make a motion that we do not try to do any recapture.
All right, so we now have a motion on the floor. Do we?
For how long?
Well, they're in year 7 of a 10-year pilot, so I guess that's a good question. And I guess back to Jerry's points, I mean that, we review these annually anyways, right? I mean, we do an annual review of all of our pilots. So, at this time, I would say that it's, we're not moving forward with, if we go with that motion, we're not moving forward with recapture, and this will be reviewed again next year, as all our pilots are. And, I think, the emphasis here we'll be on continued dialogue with the company and see where they are a year from now. With
Joe, I might offer that. Why don't I second the motion so that we can have the discussion?
Okay, thank you, Joe.
And then perhaps what might, and I think this is getting to the point being made. I'm not sure, frankly, that we need a motion. Perhaps I think an expression of consensus not to move towards recapture, but encourage Brittany and Cheyenne to quarterly report back to the board as to where things are. And then if at some point, if it's trending in a good way, then I think we have fulfilled our fiduciary responsibility. But let's just say it's trending in the wrong direction. At any point, we can have a conversation about recapture. So perhaps I might suggest that, Tom, you consider withdrawing your motion, and that through consensus, we agree as a board not to pursue recapture and request that Brittany and her team report back to us quarterly so that we don't lose track. And then if at some point we need to reconsider, we would do that.
I guess I could do that. I'm sort of thinking in terms of the yearly review anyway, so.
Right, and by bringing it forward through a quarterly update, we're not waiting for the year.
Now we do have, I mean, there are some things tied to the annual part of it in respect to the taxing jurisdiction. So as Brittany mentioned, we'll have to provide a letter of justification to them of why we're continuing to allow the pilot to take precedent or be in place over what would be the normal tax rate. So we will have to provide that and presumably update that. But to Jerry's point, if we I think the emphasis here would be on just the continued dialogue between our organization and the business, and making sure that things are trending in the right direction. We're doing what we can in terms of, making sure that this business that's important to our community is feeling supported and has the support they need to be successful, and also our responsibility to the taxing jurisdictions to assure that, that there is a benefit to the community through, through job retention or, possible growth and keeping the business here and successful.
And I think the conversation we've had really forms the basis for the letter that would come from the IDA to the taxing jurisdiction.
Okay. All right. So to try to summarize, I believe we've had the motion rescinded at this time in order to reflect in the meeting minutes that we've had this discussion, and that we want continued we'll follow up with what's needed in terms of correspondence with the taxing jurisdictions, and we're looking for continued and more frequent collaboration and conversation on a quarterly basis between our organization and the business. Okay. All right. Just to keep us moving here, the next is our related to the U.S. Light Energy. This is the two projects that are nearing completion or complete in Turin and Carthage. So this is a separate issue from what Tom mentioned earlier related to the Martinsburg project. So I just wanted to clarify that as we start this discussion.
Do you want this one or do you want me to take it, Britt?
Go ahead, Shay.
Okay, so these two projects, we had granted sales tax exemptions for as well as a pilot for each. The sales tax exemption, the ST60 forms that we file with the state set a threshold for how much sales tax exemption we're granting. Both of the projects, when they reported their 2019, what they claimed in sales tax exemption. So as they purchased things, what they were exempt from on taxes, they overutilized those exemptions. So it's a requirement that we keep track of that. And if they do, if somebody who we've granted that to does overuse the exemption, we have to recapture that for New York State. So we've started that process with our attorney. US Light is aware because when they submitted those annual forms to us, I pushed back and I said, "Are these is this the real numbers? Because this is a problem." So they're aware, and they're aware that they're going to have to pay back the difference. Along with that comes penalties and late fees, interest on the money that they've overextended. So we've started that process with our attorney, and this is just kind of more of an awareness item for the board that we're going through that process.
All right, thank you. Any questions on that?
And just a side note, that's nothing that hits our financials. That's really between US Light and the state, those dollar transactions.
I might suggest that we keep this as an ongoing agenda item for the foreseeable future. So as a board, we just stay linked to this and can remain thoughtful and reflective.
Yep. I'll certainly do that.
Any other questions or comments there? All right, thank you. So the last item, I believe we're turning it over to Jenna for an update on the survey that was done.
Yeah, and before Jenna, at the end of last year, if you can recall, we launched the first ever business retention and expansion annual survey. And this is part of a larger program where annually we will put out surveys to our business community. And really the survey is going to be used to assess their needs, any expansion, needs in the foreseeable future, any threats to closure, workforce needs, training needs. And this survey is giving us a lot of data to work from. And a lot of the results have really concluded some of the things that we're already working on and have inspired us to add some programming to our toolkit in the future. So Jenna she's pulled out some of the more interesting data points from that survey, and we just wanted to take 20 minutes or so for her to share and have you guys comment. So go ahead, Jenna.
Thank you, Brittany. So like Brittany said, I just picked out a few data points. There are a total of 55 questions that we asked businesses. So this is just a brief overview. If you have questions at the end, please feel free to ask them. So the survey questions included business operations and business inventory. So this was anything from how many employees to what industry they're in, average sales, and the overall business inventory of Lewis County is what we were looking for to get a broad sense of who is operating in what industries. Expansion needs, of course, workforce needs. As far as training, we worked with the JCC Ed Center to include some questions from them to see what people from the community thought that center could best be used for. So you'll see some answers from that. And then immediate needs related to COVID or in the next year, what would you like to see us be doing, and what do you need in a sense right away. So we had 43 companies that responded. The goal is to have more next year, of course. We'll be changing up the questions a little bit to try to get some more responses. Of that, 335 employees from Lewis County were represented in those 43 surveys. And as you can see from the map, we had good representation from Harrisville to Osceola, several businesses from Loudville. So it wasn't just Loudville represented, all over the county. Industries represented. This really gave us an idea to revamp our website. We're looking at what are the main industries that are represented in Lewis County, and how do we promote that to businesses coming from outside the area that want to be a part of it. So professional services, retail, tourism, agriculture. So you'll see that updated on our website in the coming weeks. Our key industries pages will be reflected from this survey. Annual sales. This really gave us a picture of small businesses to larger corporations that are operating in our area, all over the board, which is great to see. You'll see under the $500,000 threshold, there's quite a few, which really emphasizes our small business community. And I was encouraged to see that many small businesses took the survey, taking the initiative to give us some information. And as you'll see, several are looking at expanding in the next 3 years. Whether they're expanding in one or several of these categories, we had businesses say that they are expanding their product lines, their services, their square footage, and their workforce, which is very encouraging. Only 13 businesses out of the 43 have no plans for expansion at this time. Workforce needs. So this goes back to the JCC questions that we asked everyone, and we actually added a few of our own as well to get the scope of workforce needs in the county. So 55% of employees require training when they're hired, and 33 are on a case-by-case basis, which really tells us that there is a need for training initiatives in the county. However, 31 of the 45 businesses surveyed say they do not have a budget for employee training. Several of them noted that it's done internally. We've had some conversations with JCC about what the site can be utilized for and how can it be funded for businesses to utilize it at a low cost or no cost opportunity. Some of the top interests in local trainings included managerial and supervisory skills and basic food safety and sanitation. So some restaurants represented, but also leadership and networking comes up on every occasion when talking to businesses as well. And then several people listed QuickBooks, which we've been in conversation with the SBDC recently about doing some financial literacy courses. So that really validated that point as well. So this speaks to the Lewis County Higher Education Center in particular. This question was focused on that and what people thought it should be used for. So business management was top of the list, including professional development courses, vocational training, including apprenticeships, interns, co-ops, which I think really validates our point again that we need to be looking at other opportunities for training rather than just internally within people's businesses. And specialized trainings. This really came from the wide variety of industries represented and the specific companies that answered the questions. So welding, sewing and upholstery, paper technology, you can probably guess what companies answered those questions. But Microsoft and leadership again came up in that as well for specialized trainings. We did have some open-ended questions as well, and I wanted to share a few quotes with you guys from what people said, because I thought some of them were very enlightening. This speaks to long-term needs to weather future disruption. This is on everyone's radar right now. Of course, the county is doing a broadband study that they just wrapped up the survey for. And I spoke with the DANK office, who is heading up that survey, and they said that they had a great response rate to the survey. 9% of our population was represented, and it is going to ECC Technologies to further report out on what the survey results are, and then hopefully we will have a guidance to move forward on how we can implement broadband in our area. Again, some long-term needs is to promote the area to outsiders. And I think we're starting to do this with our videos, really starting to target audiences outside of our region. And we will look at doing some other marketing campaigns in other regions as well, based on some feedback from this survey. Really good website support. This is a very positive thing to see. Apple Mill Development is actually signed up for myNNY.biz after the survey. So you can see that there is some impact already happening. We're currently up to 12 sign-ons for myNNY.biz. And this survey will give us some guidance to reach out to additional businesses that don't have websites. And marketing came up several times as well. Assistance with marketing programs. So we'll continue to look at education and webinars to support those businesses. And then this was kind of a last question, kind of what else can the Lewis County Economic Development assist with businesses in our community, and what program ideas do you have? So Mags Creation, we've worked with them right along. They've actually already expanded their workforce after taking this survey, so that was a positive. But this statement helped businesses find and build partnerships with other businesses, mentor programs to help guide new businesses and help existing ones adapt. This really speaks to our entrepreneurial ecosystem that we are developing, which we have had some preliminary discussions internally, and we've brought in the SBDC as a partner to help evolve this program. What's the next steps? We're looking at fall to really roll it out, which will include a series of trainings for entrepreneurs, networking opportunities, and then a mentorship program as kind of a next step after they go through the entrepreneurial ecosystem program. And we're working to come up with a fun name for that as well. So that is in the works. Again, just validates our strategic planning initiatives. And then we had a nice comment that the people really appreciate all that we're doing, and they're hopeful for additional meetings and collaboration. So, and we are as well, looking forward to putting on additional events and allowing businesses to network. Like Brittany said, we did just have our real estate roundtable meeting Tuesday, which was a great conversation. And those types of events really just get people thinking outside of the box, and us too, on what can we creatively collaborate on, and how do we get creative with funding, et cetera, et cetera. So people are recognizing that we're doing that and having those conversations. So it's notable that we are looking forward to creating those events and spaces for people to be creative with us. And then next steps for this program. So again, that was just a brief overview of some interesting data picked out. We will continually analyze the data and come up with a full report from each question. Continued business outreach. So we will reach out to each business individually and assess their needs, which we already are in the process of that as well. We are finalizing our manufacturing meetings and meeting with additional businesses on the side for their needs. And then program development, which I said the entrepreneurial ecosystem is in progress. We're also always supporting businesses on a day-to-day basis and trying to get creative with how we can help. So that is a brief overview. If you guys have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Jenna, I do have a couple of questions. First, I just want to thank you for the presentation. It was well done and very informative. Two things that I took out of this that I would like a little bit of clarification on is for the DANK broadband survey. You know, you mentioned it's gone to. You mentioned it was something.
ECC Technologies is doing the report for the county.
Okay. Do we know what the next step is and what part the IDA may play in that next step?
That's a great question. Currently, it's the county and DANK that are collaborating on this project. I'm sure we will be in the reporting process of this. Brittany, I don't know if you are on any committees related to the broadband survey, but we'll definitely get access to the report and hopefully have some next steps that we can perform.
Yeah, so I just had a conversation with Cassie Buell with the planning department, and next step is for ECC to complete or analyze the survey results and provide a report. The county is then going to work with DANK on a path forward. My questions, I guess, to the county were funding. I mean, how are we going to fund this? And honestly, I think as a county, there's so many examples around the country of communities who've just taken broadband into their own hands. They've rallied the community, they've fundraised, gotten money from creative sources. I think relying on, like, for example, there's a federal grant that just came out yesterday through the Northern Border Regional Commission that we could potentially apply for grant funds for broadband. But I think at this point, we've tried so many avenues and tried to rely on so many other people to get it done for us. I think we really need to get creative and take matters into our own hands of how we raise the funds to make this happen. I think in every single conversation we have, even the real estate roundtable, it was, if you want to attract people here, you want to attract remote workers, you need broadband. Because people aren't going to work remotely if they don't have broadband at their house in the middle of nowhere in Constableville. So is still to be determined, but I think the funding part of it, we're going to need to get really creative on.
Agree. And I think the point I just wanted to bring up was at the point where there is an opportunity to bring, members of our community into the fold of this. I am 100% on board with that and happy to participate as a board member or just as a community member who is directly affected, and so many of our neighbors in this area as well. So I just wanted to kind of bring that up. I didn't know at what point, general public involvement would, other than the completion of the surveys, might come up. So I wanted to do that, bring that up. And then additionally, I may have missed it and you may have mentioned this, but was there any follow-up plans following that real estate roundtable? Is there interest in continuing something or any follow-up materials or anything like that?
Yes. So I'm finalizing a kind of a report of sorts from what we discussed and next steps. there was definitely interest in continuing that conversation on a quarterly basis for the real estate industry. Again, Brittany said it, hit the nail on the head. They really had no idea that some of the things that we were doing. So I think it's very valuable to continue to get them the information.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Jerry. I think when it comes to the broadband, well, first, an outstanding report, comprehensive. So thank you for that. To follow up on the broadband, and there was in the last day or so, on one of the media outlets, I heard some conversation about the survey and business development. And a point that was made, I thought is very relevant, that maybe the lens shift that we need to have is to start thinking of broadband as a true, as a piece of infrastructure, as a utility, if you will. Like we think of natural gas, we think of, electrical lines and roads and, some basic infrastructure that are now a requirement versus a nice to have. And so if we think of it in that context, is there a larger place for county government to drive investment from the county into expanding the broadband? I can't say that I'm well versed on the topic, but I think if we rely on, little grants and a lot of little projects, we wouldn't do that with roads. We wouldn't do that with electrical, and and maybe if we could drive the conversation in that direction and view it as a true part of utility or infrastructure, economic infrastructure, we perhaps can drive greater progress more quickly. Or am I out in left field on this one?
I completely agree with you, Jerry. I mean, I think it's absolutely a need to bring in all of the municipalities and to have this conversation with them. I think the taxpayer, when we think about it as taxpayer dollars being spent on infrastructure, I think the taxpayers would be extremely happy to see where the money is being spent, and it's being spent on broadband infrastructure. That's something that the community would totally get behind. So I think you're right, Jerry. We need to maybe shift the conversation in that sense, because grants come and go. They're not always available. They're very complicated. And you have to rely on someone else to make it happen. So I think going back to taking matters into our own hands, how do we do that? How do we rally the community and get the municipalities involved is important.
I think from the standpoint of, why do these areas not have Time Warner Spectrum now, or what, those, as a business decision, those companies have made the decision that it wasn't worth their investment in running the lines, which kind of goes back to the public good part of it, right? Is that if it's not, there's certain things in our society that are done for the public good that don't necessarily make a profitable business model related to infrastructure. And, internet access has become part of that, right? At the same time, I get a little worried that it goes down the same path as the snow plowing seasonal roads as we, because the bottom line is there's lots of houses for sale in Wowville and there's pretty good internet there. And that we go down this path of investment because someone wants to come up here and turn their camp into a house, and then they complain that the roads aren't plowed and they don't have internet. And I feel like there's part of the public discussion around this also has to be, where do you draw that line a little bit. But so no, and that's for future conversations, but just related to Jerry's points, I think that it has quickly become something that's for the greater good and the community infrastructure need. But we also have to recognize the confines of living in a rural area and balance those investments. So. But all right, so we have a few minutes left, and this has been great discussion, and really appreciate Jenna's update and everyone's work on this. But was any other questions or comments as we draw to a close here? All right, I'd just like to draw your attention to the dates of the next meetings in green on your screen right now. And if there's no other questions or comments, we'll take a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Jerry, a second.
I'll second.
Mackenzie, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, everyone. Meeting's closed, and again, dates for our upcoming meetings have been shared, and hope everyone has a good